Hi everybody, we're here at John Sadler's Auto Repair. And today we have a 2006 Toyota Matrix with a 1.8 liter engine, automatic transmission. Customers complain he's driving at a higher speed, he presses on the brake, and the steering wheel starts to shimmy like this. And it's got to the point where it's gotten a little bit dangerous. He went to another repair facility when this happened several months ago, and they resurfaced his brake rotors, and then he was in good shape for a few months, and he said the problem came back again. So for a quick review, whenever you're driving a vehicle and you're doing a test drive and you're checking things out, you press on the brake pedal. I noticed the brake pedal also pulsated back and forth, and then was at a little higher speed. When the pedal's pulsating, then the steering wheel started to shimmy along with it when you got going faster. One of the things that make the wheel shimmy also is if the tire has a problem. So we looked at the tire. The tires are in good condition, they're nice and round, there's no defects in the tires. When I still had the tires mounted on, I moved the wheel from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock like this, and I moved it from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock like this, and I had no play in the steering whatsoever. And when you drive down the road, the steering feels good, because looseness in the steering can also cause a shake in the steering wheel, but not so much in the brake pedal. And then I went ahead and put a dial indicator on the brake rotor, and it's supposed to have no more than 0.03 of an inch lateral runout. So now we're going to measure the runout with the dial indicator we have hooked up on here, and we're starting off at 0. And we're going to wait to zoom in on that. You got it? Okay. And as you watch the needle move, there's 5 thousandths, there's 6 thousandths of an inch. We're going to go back to 0 again. There's 6 thousandths of an inch. So it's double the limit that it's supposed to be. And one of the things that can cause that to happen is the other repair shop told him that the brake pads were still in good shape. So he wasn't worried about it, they just wanted to resurface his rotors. Well, I took the brake pads off, and there's still quite a bit of material on the brake pad, but the problem is the brake pad is what's called a generic pad. If this was a Toyota pad, it would have a 2-piece shim that goes on top of here, and it would have a different style, and actually have a number behind this shim, and this shim would be removable. This shim doesn't really want to come off. It's stuck on there pretty well. So the same thing on the inside one, there's still quite a bit of pad left, but the problem what's happening is this material is so hard that it's warping the brake rotor. And you can see before it hits the little wear sensor, there's still quite a bit of pad, so he could probably drive this thing another 15,000 miles. But what's going to happen is he drove it and he paid a shop, they surfaced these rotors, they put the same old brake pads back on again. Now a few months later, now he's got the same problem again. And people aren't taking the time to diagnose. They're buying these fancy brake pads that are supposed to last a lifetime. Yeah, the pad will last a lifetime, but every time you have to go in and pay money to get the rotor resurfaced. So one of the things you might think about with brakes, I just use what the factory recommends. I'll use aftermarket rotors if I find a good quality one, but for brakes I use what the manufacturer recommends. One other thing that could cause a problem with the pads staying on would be the guide pins that are here and the caliper mounting. There's some guide pins inside of here. I'll pop one of them out for you. And it's a little bit dried out, but there's still a little bit of grease in here, and it moves freely. So if this was hanging up and the guide pin could not release, was staying stuck on, then the brake rotor would get too hot because of that. There's no problem with the caliper. The brake fluid looks pretty good. The guide pins are working. So the problem that it has is this hardware in here is pretty old. But the main problem is it's what's called a generic brake pad. It's from an aftermarket manufacturer that Toyota did not design. So when you have a vehicle that the manufacturer designed, sure, the brake pad's going to wear out faster, but it's not going to have a problem with the pedal shaking, and you're not going to have to go back 2 or 3 times to have the vehicle serviced properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find him a good aftermarket rotor, and then we're going to put the Toyota brake pads, the Toyota shim fit kit, and the Toyota mounting hardware down here. Then we're going to take these guide pins out, clean these holes with brake cleaner, then we're going to pull this rotor off and clean the hub surface on it. Then we're going to put a new rotor on here, mount the caliper mounting on here. Then once we do that, we're going to put the dial indicator back on there, and we should have 1 or 2 thousandths of an inch at the most. So it's a little tip from John Sadler's. Have a nice day.